Good evening. In a moment that has sent ripples across the United Kingdom and beyond, an extraordinary ceremony inside the ancient walls of a royal chapel has ignited awe, controversy, and a renewed fascination with the monarchy's symbolic power. At the center of it all stand three figures: Catherine, Princess of Wales, her eldest son, Prince George, and a charismatic cleric now being called the Royal Pastor. What began as a quiet private service has evolved into one of the most talked about royal moments in recent memory, a moment where tradition, faith, and destiny seem to collide under candlelit arches. The event took place at a historic chapel long associated with royal milestones, widely believed to be St. George's Chapel. Known for hosting royal weddings, funerals, and sacred ceremonies for centuries, the chapel has rarely witnessed something as unusual or as charged as what unfolded that day. Attendees were few: members of the royal household, select clergy, and a handful of invited guests filled the wooden pews. There was no press announcement beforehand, no official live stream, only whispers. But as the ceremony progressed, something unexpected happened. According to insiders, the presiding pastor, an influential spiritual figure invited for the occasion, paused midway through the service. His voice, calm but resolute, echoed through the chapel. This child is not merely born into history, he is chosen to shape it. The words hung in the air. Then came the declaration that would soon dominate headlines: Prince George is the chosen one. Observers say the most striking transformation that day was not only in the tone of the ceremony, but in Catherine, Princess of Wales herself. Dressed in an elegant ivory ensemble, Catherine carried an aura described by attendees as regal yet deeply spiritual. Throughout the service, she remained composed, but those close to her noted a visible emotional shift as the pastor spoke. Sources claim the ceremony included a symbolic blessing directed not only at Prince George, but also at Catherine, as a mother entrusted with guiding a future king under what the pastor described as a divine calling. For many royal watchers, this moment felt like a turning point. Catherine has long been admired for her poise, discipline, and commitment to duty, but now she appears to be stepping into a more profound role, one that blends tradition with a sense of higher purpose. At just a young age, Prince George has already lived a life under global scrutiny. As second in line to the throne, following his father, Prince William, his future has always been clear. But this moment added a new layer to his identity. Witnesses say George stood quietly beside his mother during the ceremony, his expression serious beyond his years. When the pastor addressed him directly, placing a hand gently over his shoulder, the chapel fell into complete silence. Some attendees later described the atmosphere as electric, while others called it unsettling. Was this merely symbolic language, or something more? The British monarchy has always been deeply intertwined with the church. Since the days of King Henry VIII and the formation of the Church of England, the sovereign has held the title of Supreme Governor. Coronations themselves are steeped in religious ritual, most notably the anointing with holy oil, considered a sacred and almost mystical act. Yet, even within that context, this ceremony stands apart. Never in recent history has a royal heir been publicly or semi publicly declared a chosen one by a religious figure. Historians are divided. Some argue that the pastor's words were metaphorical, echoing long-standing beliefs about monarchy as a divinely guided institution. Others believe the language crossed into unprecedented territory. As news of the ceremony began to spread, the palace found itself under intense pressure to respond. An official statement, carefully worded, acknowledged the service but downplayed its significance. The Prince and Princess of Wales attended a private religious gathering focused on reflection, faith, and family values. Any interpretations beyond this are speculative. Notably, the statement did not address the pastor's declaration directly. This silence has only fueled further speculation. Across the UK and social media worldwide, reactions have been swift and deeply divided. Supporters of the monarchy have embraced the moment as a powerful reaffirmation of Britain's spiritual heritage. Some see it as a reminder that the royal family represents more than politics. that it embodies continuity, faith, and destiny. Critics, however, have raised concerns. Is it appropriate, they ask, for a modern constitutional monarchy to be associated with such language? Does this risk blurring the line between tradition and myth? One commentator described it as a moment that feels lifted from medieval times, while another called it a beautifully symbolic expression of hope. Throughout the unfolding drama, Prince William has remained largely out of the spotlight. Sources indicate he was present at the ceremony, standing slightly behind Catherine and George. Observers noted his calm demeanor, though some claim he appeared contemplative as the pastor spoke. As a future king himself, William has consistently emphasized modernization and relatability in his approach to royal duty. This raises an intriguing question. How does he interpret this moment? Is it a meaningful spiritual milestone for his son, or a potentially controversial narrative that must be carefully managed? If there is one figure at the emotional heart of this story, it is undoubtedly Catherine, Princess of Wales. To raise a future monarch is already an immense responsibility. To do so under the shadow of a declaration like this adds a new dimension, one that blends expectation with something far more intangible. Royal insiders suggest Catherine is approaching the situation with characteristic balance. She understands the weight of symbolism, one source shared. But she is, above all, a mother. Her priority is ensuring George has a grounded, happy childhood. And yet, the image of her standing beside her son in that candlelit chapel, listening as he was called chosen, is one that continues to captivate the public imagination. Little is known about the pastor who made the declaration. Described as a respected yet unconventional spiritual leader, he has reportedly advised prominent figures in both religious and public life. His invitation to the ceremony suggests he holds a level of trust within certain royal circles. Since the event, he has not issued any public statement. This silence has only deepened the intrigue. Moments like this invite reflection on the monarchy's long and complex relationship with faith. From the divine right of kings to the sacred rituals of coronation, the idea that rulers are chosen or guided by a higher power is deeply embedded in history. Yet, in a 21st century context, such ideas can feel both powerful and controversial. Is this ceremony a revival of ancient symbolism, or simply a modern moment interpreted through a dramatic lens? As the story continues to unfold, several questions remain unanswered. Will the palace provide further clarification? Will the pastor speak publicly? And how will this moment shape the future narrative surrounding Prince George? For now, one thing is certain. The image of a young prince standing in a historic chapel, as a voice declares him chosen, has captured the world's attention in a way few royal moments ever do. Whether viewed as symbolic, spiritual, or controversial, this ceremony has added a new chapter to the evolving story of the modern monarchy. For Catherine, Princess of Wales, it marks a moment of elevation, not just in status, but in perception. For Prince George, it introduces a narrative that may follow him for years to come. And for the world watching, it serves as a reminder that even in an age of technology and transparency, the monarchy retains an enduring ability to inspire mystery, emotion, and debate. In the hours following the ceremony, what had been a closely guarded royal moment began to unravel into a global media storm. At first, it was just fragments, an unnamed source, a blurred photograph, a quote that seemed almost too dramatic to be real. Then came the confirmation that a private service had indeed taken place at St. George's Chapel, and suddenly, speculation ignited into something far more intense. By morning, headlines across Britain and beyond were ablaze. Royal heir declared chosen in secret ceremony. Catherine elevated as future king's spiritual guardian. Palace faces questions over unusual religious declaration. The world was watching and demanding answers. Behind the grand gates of royal residences, however, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Senior aides to Prince William reportedly convened urgent meetings to assess the situation. The concern wasn't just about the ceremony itself, but how it was being interpreted. The language is the issue, one insider revealed. Words like chosen one carry weight. They mean different things to different people, and not all of those interpretations are helpful. For a monarchy that has worked carefully to remain relevant, balanced, and politically neutral in modern times, the sudden surge of mystical or divine narratives posed a delicate challenge. Yet, notably, Catherine, Princess of Wales, remained composed. Those close to her say she refused to be drawn into the noise, choosing instead to focus on her children, particularly Prince George, who was now at the center of a global conversation he could barely understand. For all the grandeur of the moment, one truth remained impossible to ignore. Prince George is still a child. Friends of the family describe him as thoughtful, curious, and quietly observant. He enjoys sports, school activities, and time with his siblings, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis. But now a new narrative had been placed upon him, one that even adults would struggle to carry. According to sources, Catherine has taken extra steps in the days following the ceremony to ensure George's routine remains unchanged. School runs, homework, family dinners, normality, she believes, is the greatest protection she can offer. As the story spread, public opinion began to split into distinct camps. The believers. For some, the pastor's declaration resonated deeply. Supporters saw it as a powerful affirmation of the monarchy's sacred roots, a reminder that the institution is not merely ceremonial, but symbolic of something greater. Online forums lit up with messages like, "The monarchy has always had a divine element. This just makes it visible again. George represents hope. Maybe this is exactly what the world needs." The skeptics' others, however, were far less convinced. Critics questioned whether such language belonged in a modern democracy. Some expressed concern that it could create unrealistic expectations or even pressure on a young boy. One commentator wrote, "He's not a chosen one. He's a child who will one day inherit a constitutional role. Let's not turn this into mythology." As debate intensified, attention turned to the broader religious community. While the Church of England has not issued a formal statement, several senior clerics have spoken cautiously on the matter. One bishop noted, "Throughout history, language of calling and purpose has been used in religious contexts. However, such terms should always be understood with humility and care, especially when applied to individuals in public life." It was a measured response, but one that subtly acknowledged the sensitivity of the situation. Amid the swirling speculation, one thing has become increasingly clear. Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, are approaching this moment as a team. In their first public appearance since the ceremony, the couple appeared calm, composed, and, perhaps most importantly, unshaken. They did not address the headlines directly. Instead, they focused on their work, their duties, their roles as parents. But observers couldn't help noticing subtle details. William's protective posture near George, Catherine's reassuring hand on her son's shoulder. A quiet exchange between the couple that seemed to speak volumes without words. It was a reminder that, beneath the titles and expectations, they are a family navigating an extraordinary situation. The idea of a chosen monarch is not new. In medieval Europe, kings were often believed to rule by divine will, a concept known as the divine right of kings. Ceremonies were designed to reinforce this belief, blending politics with spirituality in powerful ways. But the modern monarchy operates under very different principles. Today, its strength lies not in divine authority, but in public trust. This is why the recent ceremony feels so significant. It touches on something ancient, something deeply rooted in history, yet it exists within a contemporary world that values transparency, equality, and rational discourse. Days after the event, the mysterious pastor finally spoke. In a brief statement released through a representative, he clarified his intentions. "My words were not meant to elevate one individual above others, but to remind us all that every life carries purpose. In Prince George, I see a young person who will one day serve others in a significant way." It was a softer interpretation, but it did little to quiet the debate. For many, the original phrase, "chosen one," had already taken on a life of its own. As the media cycle continues, one thing is becoming increasingly evident. This is not a story that will disappear overnight. It has touched too many themes: faith, power, childhood, destiny to simply fade into the background. For Prince George, it may one day become a defining anecdote in the story of his life. For Catherine, Princess of Wales, it has reinforced her role as both protector and guide. And for the monarchy as a whole, it has opened a new chapter, one filled with questions, interpretations, and possibilities. Yet, amid all the noise, there is one moment that has not been captured in headlines. Later that evening, after the cameras had gone and the discussions had quieted, Catherine is said to have spent time alone with George. No ceremony, no titles, no expectations, just a mother and her son. What was said between them remains private. But those close to the family believe the message was simple. You are not defined by what others call you. You are defined by who you choose to be. The turning point. When narrative meets reality, as days turned into weeks, the intensity of the headlines began to soften. But the impact of that single moment inside St. George's Chapel did not fade. Instead, it evolved. What had once been a shocking declaration, the chosen one, gradually transformed into something more nuanced, more reflective, and perhaps more meaningful. Behind palace walls, a quiet shift was underway. Advisors close to Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, began guiding the narrative away from sensationalism and towards substance. The focus was no longer on a dramatic title, but on values: service, responsibility, compassion, leadership. In carefully planned public appearances, the family subtly reinforced this message. Prince George was seen participating in community events, engaging with children his age, and observing his parents' charitable work, not as a chosen one, but as a young boy learning what it means to serve. And the shift worked. Slowly, the conversation began to change. If the ceremony marked a symbolic elevation, the weeks that followed confirmed something even more powerful. Catherine, Princess of Wales, had stepped fully into her role as the emotional and moral anchor of the future monarchy. Observers noted a new depth in her presence. She spoke less, but conveyed more. Every gesture, every interaction with George seemed intentional, grounding, protective. At a children's charity event, one quiet moment captured global attention. George hesitated before greeting a group of young attendees. Catherine gently leaned down, whispered something to him, and smiled. Moments later, he stepped forward, confident, composed, no grand declarations, no mystical language, just guidance, just motherhood. While Catherine shaped the emotional tone, Prince William provided something equally essential: stability. In private, sources say William was clear about one thing: George will not grow up believing he is above others. He will grow up understanding he is responsible to them. It was a defining philosophy, one that reflects the modern monarchy's evolution. Gone are the days when kings ruled by divine right. Today, they serve by public trust, and William is determined that his son understands that difference. Perhaps the most remarkable transformation has been in Prince George himself. At first, he remained largely silent, watching, listening, absorbing the attention surrounding him. But gradually, glimpses of his personality began to emerge. At a school event, when asked what he wanted to be when he grew up, George reportedly smiled and said, "I just want to help people, like my mom and dad." It was a simple answer, yet it carried more weight than any title ever could. As news stories took over headlines, the chosen one moment began to recede into the background, but it didn't disappear. Instead, it settled into a different place, less as a controversy and more as a point of reflection. For some, it remains a powerful symbol; for others, a cautionary tale. But for most, it has become something in between, a reminder that even in a modern world, moments of mystery and meaning can still capture the imagination. In a final interview months later, the pastor who sparked it all offered a more grounded perspective. He said, "Perhaps I chose words that carried too much weight. But if there is one truth I hope remains, it is this: every generation looks for hope. And sometimes we see that hope in the young." It was not an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. And in many ways, it brought the story full circle. At its heart, beyond the headlines and interpretations, this story has always been about a family, a father determined to guide his son with humility, a mother committed to protecting her child's innocence, and a young boy learning, step by step, what his future may hold. One quiet evening, months after the ceremony, the family was seen walking together, away from cameras, away from expectations. No crowds, no speeches, just Prince William, Catherine, Princess of Wales, Prince George, and his siblings, laughing, talking, living. In that moment, there were no titles, no chosen one, just a family. History is often shaped not only by grand events, but by the stories we tell about them. The ceremony at St. George's Chapel will likely be remembered for years to come. Not because of controversy, but because it sparked a conversation about leadership, identity, and the expectations we place on the next generation. For Catherine, Princess of Wales, it marked a moment of quiet elevation. For Prince George, it became a story he will one day understand in his own way. And for the world, it served as a reminder greatness is not declared, it is lived. In the end, the idea of a chosen one may say more about us than it does about the person it is placed upon. We look for symbols, we search for meaning, we hope for leaders who can guide us into the future. But the truth, simple, enduring, and quietly powerful, is this: even those born into extraordinary roles must find their own path. And as Prince George continues to grow, guided by Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, one thing becomes clear: he does not need to be chosen to become who he is meant to be. The end.